This program is brought to you by the Reeves Law Firm, www.reevesfirm.com.
In the know. Good evening, everyone. In the know. Tony Reeves, fire. Following the news in any way, shape, or form. No shortage of things to talk about. What does it mean? What will it bring? Is this a reality we simply have to accept? Tony Reeves, fire. Tony Reeves. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Q&A, Social Security Disability Today. Today, we're going to talk about what does your medical treatment say about you? All right. Some of you may remember quite a few years ago, I did a video that was called, What Does Your Medication Say About You? So this is kind of an expansion on that premise about what does your medical treatment say about you? All right. The reality is that when you're trying to prove that you are disabled under the Social Security process, what Social Security is going to rely on is, quite honestly, your medical records. I know that's kind of obvious, and we all know that. We've talked about it a million times. It is what it is. It's important, though, to understand, because this is where people sometimes get caught, is we have it in our minds that we just believe that our medical records, or my clients, I've had people tell me all the time, they just swear their medical records are so strong. But they sometimes forget your medical records say something about you. And when you say, well, what do you mean by what they say about me? Well, what your medical records do is they give an indication to Social Security about the severity of your impairment. Doesn't mean what I'm saying, it's about the severity of your impairment. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, okay, think about it like this. Almost every medical treatment out there's going to be a standard or set forms of treatment regimen that the person is going to have to receive. The levels of that treatment will dictate or will let Social Security know how severe your condition is. Now, I don't want anybody to sit here and think that somebody at Social Security is sitting here looking at some magical checklist saying, well, if you don't go to this type of doctor, you're not disabled, or if you don't take this kind of medication, you're not disabled. It's not that simple. They have to look at everything. They have to look at your medical conditions, what other doctors have said about your condition, what you and other people have been saying about it. They look at it in its totality. Today, what we're talking about is, from a first glance standpoint, what is your medical records? What kind of message does your medical records say? So let's kind of start with an example, and you'll see where I'm going. Let's say, for instance, that you're alleging that you're disabled as a result of a bad lower back. Maybe you were working at a job, you pulled something because you were trying to take a big box off of a shelf, you hurt your back. And what you're trying to tell the court is that as a result of your back problems, you can't work. All right. So then the first thing they do is they get copies of your medical records and they look to see what's going on. First couple things they're going to look for is, have you told anybody that your back is keeping you out? That's going to be a fairly easy and straightforward one. The key then becomes the treatment. What happens after that? Did the doctor send you for any type of x-rays, MRIs, CTs, anything like that, CAT scans, anything that shows the severity of your condition? You say no. Okay. Keep in mind that might send a signal that your back may not be that bad, or to that level where they feel like a diagnostic testing is necessary. But let's assume that they do. Then all of a sudden they look at your condition, and then they determine that, let's say that they determine that all you need is ibuprofen. Now that's something you can get over the counter. First glance, somebody may look at that and say, okay, if your condition only needs to be treated with a conservative mechanism of treatment, which is over-the-counter pain medication, you now have to wonder and ask yourself the question, and this is the problem that the Social Security runs across, that maybe your condition, it causes you problems, but it's not so severe that it may keep you out of work. Now you would say, just from looking at my medication, it's not that simple. And I wanted to make sure I put that out at the very beginning, that I don't want anybody to watch this video and take the assumption that there's magical workers or judges or staff members who are looking at specific things and checking it off saying, oh, no CT, no X-ray, no MRI, you're not disabled. That's not what I'm referring to. What I'm referring to is remembering what the weight of your evidence is presenting when you're looking at the evidence. So let's take that same situation going forward. Let's say that the doctor refers you to a pain management physician because you're in so much pain that the normal conservative treatment is not working. So they tried you on ibuprofen, they tried you on Flexeril, muscle relaxer. They tried you on Motrin. They've tried you on a variety of different medications, and they just aren't working. So they're going to elevate you up. Now you're going to a pain management doctor. This doctor is now deciding, let's give you some some lower back injections, epidural steroid injections. Okay, showing us now that you're in a certain level of pain, that you're doing a little bit more aggressive conservative treatment. Now they're looking at it, they're looking at MRI, they're running it again, they're determining that maybe you need to have an additional surgery, a laminectomy, or some type of other additional surgeries that they can use to correct the problem. Additional surgeries, you're now going to a pain specialist, you're taking epidural steroid injections. See how, if you not try to be funny, but look at the difference between someone who's going to just a primary doctor and just getting ibuprofen with no type of objective testing done versus someone who has gone to their primary, they've had an x-ray, MRI done. The problems with that, it demonstrates the problems of, may demonstrate you may have some bulging disc or herniated disc or some stenosis, things of that nature. The doctor tries you on some conservative things first, that doesn't work. He then sends you to a specialist. The specialist decides to give you something, epidural steroid injections, as well as increase the dosage of your medication, as well as talking to you about different surgeries. So you've got two different spectrums of situations where you've got one, significant amounts of medication, additional pain management procedures, and you're going to a specialist as opposed to a primary and over-the-counter medication. See the difference? Now I'm going to tell you, most people go the whole range, meaning you have people who may be in the middle, mostly are in that gray middle area where they're not at the primary doctor with just over the counter, but they may not be at that same level where they have a specialist who's giving them a whole bunch of treatment. Just keep in mind this. When you are going through your treatment for your condition, do everything you possibly can to do everything your doctors tell you, and if it's not working, make sure you let your doctors know. Because if it's determined that the treatment regimen that you have, and this is the ultimate point I want to make, you are only as good as what your medical records show. Your case is only as strong as what your medical records show. Okay, I don't want that makes it come off sounding kind of weird, but you're really only as strong as what your medical records show. So you need to make sure you take every action to follow the treatment regimen that your providers provide to you, and make sure you let your doctors know. And don't just say it once. Let your doctors know if the treatment regimen that you've been provided is not working. So if it needs to be elevated, you have evidence in your file that demonstrates what your medical treatment truly demonstrates about your condition. Because the last thing you want to be is in a situation where your condition is really bad or worse, but you haven't really shared enough of this with your doctor so they can adjust your treatment so that it accurately reflects what your medical treatment says about you. That's it for us today. Tune in next week as we talk about receiving disability benefits with an attorney, going through a continuing disability review, and then trying to determine whether or not you need to hire an attorney again right when you're at the initial phases of the continuing disability review here on Q&A, Social Security Disability Today.
Good evening, everyone. In the know. Tony Reeves, fire. Following the news in any way, shape, or form. No shortage of things to talk about. What does it mean?